All right, let's get right into it. We're going to support the conclusion. Neurobiologists, whatever, investigated the language detection abilities of 18 dogs. The researchers monitored the brain activity of Joey, an Australian Shepherd, Minnie, a mixed breed, and other dogs, while the animals listened to 3 recordings, one of The Little Prince being read in Spanish, the second in Hungarian, and the third made up of short, randomly selected fragments of the first 2, scrambled so that they didn't resemble human speech. Each dog was familiar with either Spanish or Hungarian, but not both. Well, a bilingual dog, yeah, that's something. The team concluded that differences in dogs' anatomical features may affect their ability to distinguish speech from non-speech. Okay, so differences in the dog's anatomical features. So we're going to try to support that. So it has to be, this is like a strong word situation. You got to talk about the features. So I don't know. Let's start with that. Let's just start with that idea. Is there anything that's about just focusing on the features of the dogs? Okay. Long-headed dogs accustomed to hearing Spanish tended to show more brain activity when hearing Spanish than long-headed dogs accustomed to hearing Hungarian showed when hearing Hungarian. Well, this is a comparison between 2 dogs with long heads. So you're telling me that I need to care about the anatomical features. Well, that is not about their anatomical features because you're telling me the 2 dogs that have the same type of features, right? So I need to kind of compare 2 different looking dogs, I guess. B, compared with shorter-headed dogs, longer-headed dogs showed a greater difference in brain activity when hearing either Spanish or Hungarian than when hearing the scrambled recording. Okay, well, I'm not going to analyze this deeply, right? My first phase here is just a filter, right? Let's just filter the choices based on this one idea. Does it involve a comparison between dogs with different types of features? Yes, we got the shorter hair, it literally uses the word compare, and or shorter head and longer head. Okay, so let's just keep it, right? So that's good. We'll keep that for now. C, the pattern of brain activity that long-headed dogs showed when hearing the scrambled recording was different from the pattern of brain activity that short-headed dogs showed when hearing the language they were accustomed to. Okay, so in a dumb way, right? The different heads. So seems good. D, compared with shorter-headed dogs, longer-headed dogs showed a greater difference in brain activity when hearing the language they were accustomed to than when hearing the other language. Okay, so again, it has that simple idea, right? So, hey, look, I got rid of one choice with very minimal thought, right? It just, do they compare different dogs' head sizes, right? So there you go. So now if we need to do that, we need to start wedging these things apart, right? The filter is a very quick, dumb pass through the choices. Sometimes we get lucky. And even on hard questions, sometimes there's only one thing that even is related to that relationship that the passage is trying to get across. So we weren't as lucky here, but that doesn't bother me. It's not like I did anything wrong. I still got rid of one choice. So now, what are we trying to do here? The team concluded differences in dogs' anatomical features may affect their ability to distinguish speech from non-speech. So my filter was the heads. Here, let's do it this way. What was it? Short versus long? Short, long in terms of the head. Okay. And now the wedge should be speech versus non-speech. Let's just see. B, greater difference in the brain activity when hearing Spanish or Hungarian than when hearing the scrambled recording. So this is comparing real languages, speech, to the non-language. So in terms of my wedge, right, it's just like 2 checks, right? This checked off the filter. All these 3 did. This one did not. Now part 2 seems to check that off, right, in a very dumb way, right? It's comparing the different types of speech. C, pattern of brain activity the long-headed dog showed when hearing the scrambled recording was different from the pattern of brain activity the short-headed dogs showed when hearing the language they were accustomed to. Well, what I don't love about this is you're not controlling something, right? You're comparing a head that and scrambled speech, and then comparing that to a different type of head and a different type of speech, basically. So what are we supposed to conclude from that, right? I want to show that the head, the head size matters. So you got to control something, right? So yes, we do want to compare the speech versus the non-speech, but we also want to kind of have a control of some kind. This is a very understanding of the way the experimental process, the scientific method works. So going back to B for a second, I'm still using this idea of a wedge, right? What makes these different is they're comparing the 2 types of dogs, but they're also comparing them in the same way, that they both were either kind of listening to their language versus the scrambled recording. So I do like that. Again, this one doesn't really satisfy this for me. It's not making the right kind of comparison. D, compared with shorter-headed dogs, longer-headed dogs showed a greater difference in brain activity when hearing the language they were accustomed to than when hearing the other language. But aren't we supposed to distinguish non-speech? So this just fails in a very classic way. Is it's not even a speech. It's not what we're comparing, right? So is that the same thing in C though? Maybe let me go back for a second. Scrambled. Okay, no, this is saying the language they were accustomed to. So yeah, it's B. I feel really good about that, though I'm struggling to explain C away. I feel like D is obvious because we need to compare the speech to the non-speech, and so D is not doing that. It's talking about the other language, which is still speech. But C, it's like, I don't know, it just feels like a scientific method thing. Like it's just a bad experiment if that's what we're doing, because you're giving the long-headed dog one type of thing, the scrambled recording, and you're trying to say that it's different from the short-headed dog getting a language. Well, duh, because we're trying to say that they're going to be different in certain ways, right? But if you're giving them completely different languages, they should hear the language different as well, I guess is my point, right? So there should be a difference for just the long-headed dog, whether it's hearing a language that it knows versus whether it's hearing just random sounds, right? So that's what they're trying to measure, is that there is a difference between that long-headed dog hearing those two types of speech. And on top of that, when you give both of those types of speech to the short dog, then that also is going to have some difference between those two things. And there's a difference between how the long-headed dog hears those two things and the short-headed dog hears those two things. B is hitting those ideas, is that it is allowing the comparison by controlling something, right? They're saying that they showed a greater difference when they have a long head hearing the Spanish versus the scrambled recording. C isn't kind of matching things up. It's only allowing us to compare the long-headed dogs hearing the scrambled recording, right? One aspect of the experiment, and then the short-headed, oh my God, this is so hard to say, short-headed dogs doing the other type of speech. So we're missing a piece of the puzzle in that case. Let me know what you think. To me, this is, kind of obvious, but I do know that a lot of these passages are kind of requiring us in certain ways to understand the scientific method and understand what it means for something to be a control versus a variable, right? And so here, I think that that's kind of what's going on, is I understand what they're trying to measure, and I know almost like a logic sense of like how to make that comparison. It to me is just, it's very intuitive. So I am curious, but I do think that this idea of a wedge is what's really helping me. It's not so much that I'm like going back to the passage and rereading it. I'm rereading those choices and comparing what the choices are trying to do. And then when I go to the passage, I'm like, this is the one, this is the thing, right? I have like two ideas based on B and C of what they're trying to say. And then when I go back to the passage, I'm like, yeah, B is the one that matches. B is the one that the passage is going for. So because I'm going back to the passage with a clear idea of what matters, I'm much more able to kind of see that B has what matters. I hope that helps.